Hello and welcome back to Life Unpotted. This is Sophie here.
And this is Daisy, and happy that you're here today to listen to the conversation.
So if you're a new listener or if you've been on this journey with us for some time, just want to take a moment to remind you that this podcast is a space for Daisy and I to reflect on this experience called life, the experience of questioning our thoughts, questioning our experience in reality, wanting to really understand how can we enjoy life? How can we appreciate this existence? And all the ways in which the stories and the ideas that we have about ourselves and how they get in the way of us doing that. And I wanted to start off the conversation just referencing how I really feel like I've been reflecting a lot about the past few years and kind of having more space opening up after going through a lot the past few years. And it's been about 9 months since we moved. So adjusting to living in a new city, finally feeling at ease here, feeling more at ease with all these transitions and all these changes, and kind of being at a place where it feels like I'm starting to see my life, or really I'm starting to see all these experiences in my life and starting to understand them better. So for example, it feels like there's so many different versions of me, and it feels like my life was a giant puzzle, and that puzzle fell on the floor and I had no idea how to pick up the pieces. I had no idea what piece went where. And there's a blank spot on the puzzle. How do I find a new piece? Will it just come? Will it happen over time? Like, how do I navigate the chaotic nature of change, the chaotic nature of self-transformation? How do I figure this out? And I feel like I come back to this point where I'm like, there's nothing to figure out, but my mind still wants to try to understand this overarching question of who am I? Because when I look at all these pieces that are currently in my puzzle of Sophie, it's like on one side of the puzzle, there's all the pain, all the sadness, all the emotions. Other side of the puzzle, all my humor, all my jokes I make, all of my ability to be goofy in life and be funny in life and act like a kid. And then on the other side of the puzzle is like me being so connected to nature. And other side of the puzzle is me really appreciating or gaining a new appreciation for family and for New York after moving away from it. And it just feels like sometimes it just feels really weird to realize that my being, my experience in life and reality is so complex that I can't put my finger on one thing and say that's me. And I think sometimes that it leaves me with a level of comfort, but it also leaves me with a level, I think, of uncertainty, of wanting to know who I am, and kind of like that discomfort that comes with trying to put your finger on something that can't be touched. Like Alan Watts always says, like, fire can't burn fire, and you can't know thyself, because our self is just the experiences every day that we have that are constantly fleeting, but we have this crazy ability as humans to reflect. And I'm in awe sometimes of the fact that I'm alive and I have this awareness to be aware of myself and to be aware of my experience and to be aware of the fact that I'm aware and to be able to reflect. It's crazy. It's really crazy. But it's like, I'm laughing right now because I'm like, it's crazy, but why? It's crazy because to my human brain, it's crazy to comprehend my existence. But what is that relative to? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, to comprehend our own existence, it's almost like, what are we comparing that to come to the realization that it's insane we're alive? As if there's alternative universes and worlds that we've previously existed in. Or do you know what I'm saying at all? Because I'm trying to figure it out, so it could be helpful to like talk through it.
Well, I'm going to slow it down right here because I had a few thoughts in the beginning of that. And then as toward the end, you were saying something that maybe you aren't clear on what it is, something we can unpack. And maybe that will be where we go, because I'm really not sure. But what I initially was thinking was when you said know thyself, we have this desire to know ourselves but it feels like it's impossible for us to actually know ourselves, because knowing yourself would mean that there is a fixed version of you. And going along with thinking of yourself as a puzzle, and there's thousands of different pieces. Some pieces you don't know about yet, or you haven't experienced yet. So on the topic of knowing thyself, it's like we are not a fixed entity. All we can know is this experience in this moment. And I think as we try to figure out who we are and be connected to ourselves and know ourselves, it's almost not understanding who am I, who is Daisy, who is Sophie. It's understanding that you are just experiencing each moment and getting comfortable just experiencing each moment. Because my mind goes to a place where if you know Sophie and Sophie is just goofy, that's all you are. That's who you figured out who you are, and you're goofy. Well, there's some situations you'll be in, there's some moments and some experiences you'll be in where you can't be that way because it's not what's aligned with what is actually happening in the moment. So it almost feels the more we can let go of knowing ourselves, the more we can experience ourselves. And by that, I mean, there is nothing to know. All there is to do is to experience. Because there is no person to know, because you are just your experience. And no one can know your experience. Only you can know your experience. So the best way to get to know yourself is to experience life through your eyes. And by your eyes, I mean actually seeing what is here and not thinking. You know, that's a big part of it too. Because if we're thinking, we're not experiencing what is.
You can't know yourself because yourself, the idea of a self, is just the experience that you're having in each moment. And it's so interesting in my experience to watch myself change, like to watch myself be a certain way in a situation that maybe I wouldn't do in the past. And to be like, oh, you said that and you did feel confident in it. And everything was okay. Like I'm thinking about kind of all these new situations I've immersed myself in over the past year, and where I'm always like pleasantly surprised with my ability to handle something. And it's almost like the idea of Sophie, the story of Sophie, this book of Sophie, of all these things I can and can't do, that I kind of look to every now and then of, I'm in this experience. How can I handle this? Let's turn to chapter 5. How have I handled this in the past? And what I have been doing, or really like a switch that's happened in my experience, has been, instead of looking to that book for a reference point on how to act in an experience or how to act in a situation or what to say to somebody or how to respond, or going on a walk on a trail that I feel scared to go on because I haven't been before. It's like, I see how like looking to the book, looking to my past, looking really to my mind in those situations is what creates a lot of problems, because I'm not actually experiencing the situation for what it actually is. And that's why recently, as I've kind of been like integrating more into the external world, like socializing more with people, going from spending a lot of time in my inner world to interacting with other human beings, it's like that old rule book of Sophie doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't apply. So I almost feel like I'm writing a new book, but as I say this, I'm like, well, be careful, because you don't want to write a new story, because you don't want to start attaching again to I'm that way because that happened in this experience.
Well, that would mean that you knew yourself to be something, is what you're saying. It's kind of funny, because when you try to conceptualize who you are, based off a fixed amount of experiences. For example, I'm 28. So if I try to figure out who I am and knowing who I am from 28 years of life, well, what if I don't experience any similar experience to the last 28 years for the next X amount of years? If I can only know myself based off of how I've viewed myself in past experiences, that feels like a limited way to experience life. Our perspective is what informs our experience. And if our experience is informed by everyone we've been and everything that we've experienced and how we've seen that, there's no room for that to shift. And Sophie, I think what you're saying is interesting because something we noted in Tuesday's episode from this past week was that when there's like intense situations that happen in your life, it's an opportunity to kind of be reborn or experience life differently with a new perspective. Because when different experiences happen to you, it changes the way you see things. So on that note, we just never know what's going to happen to us. And when we try to think of, I am Daisy, from these 28 years of my life, this is who I am, we are limiting ourselves in how we experience the world because those are not a fixed amount of experiences. I'm not going to have the exact experiences I did the last 28 years for the next 28 years. They do not repeat like that. In the same way of we are a new person in each moment. So again, on this topic of it's impossible to know yourself because there's an infinite amount of moments to happen until we die. So it could be that with each new moment, a new perspective will be brought to us. And the more we loosen our grip, the more these experiences can exponentially change, which exponentially can change our view, our worldview. So that's where you could be, Sophie, you could be whatever you're experiencing now, whatever your life is, it could drastically change 10 minutes from now. So it's impossible to know ourselves because ourselves are a vessel for experiencing the moment. And all we are is a vessel for experiencing the moment. So if knowing yourself is anything, it's just experiencing the moment.
And that's why it's quite literally that like you are everything that you perceive. Like I'm looking at you right now and I'm like, well, wouldn't that mean I'm you? Because when you remove all of this cloud of Sophie and these thoughts of how I should be and how I should show up, like when you clear out the glasses of your mind and you clear out the glasses you're wearing, all of a sudden you're left with a very clear visual field of how you're viewing what's in front of you. And recently I've been kind of understanding what it means to be present again on a different level, because there have been so many times where I've been going through a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear and a lot of pain where it kind of feels like I'm stuck in my body or I'm stuck in my mind. And then like last night when we went to that event, in one of the groups I was in, we were in a room and it's like all I saw were the three people in the room. I did not exist in that moment. I was so immersed in the experience that quite literally all I saw was what was in front of me. So to contrast that and to kind of explain what I mean, it's like think of situations where you feel very disconnected. Like I'm here and you're there. And I'm not fully experiencing you, the person in front of you, the experience you're in, the movie you're watching, the date you're on, the walk you're on, the song you're listening to, whatever you're doing. It's almost like there's like gap between the experience because there's a lot of you getting in the way. And like this is what you experience on psychedelic mushrooms, or at least what I experience is when you remove all that thought. And really when I say remove, it's the natural arising of presence. You're not trying to remove thought. Thought just is no longer there because you've kind of gotten so used to recognizing you're not your thoughts. So if I contrast like my experience in reality right now versus 3 weeks ago when I was going through like a tornado of hell in my mind, it's such a stark difference because there's not much Sophie here anymore to get in the way. Like I am so much more in my experience that like looking at you right now, it really feels like what I am right now is everything that's in my peripheral view, everything that's physically, that my eyes, the visual field that my eyes are creating through these synapses, through my mind, I can see all these things. Well, that's all my mind. Everywhere is my mind.
My first thought is you're grasping something that doesn't exist. When you said, I'm holding on to Sophie and she's getting in the way. All these ideas I have of Sophie. I know myself. I know who I am. I am Sophie. That is something that does not exist because if all you are is experiencing this moment, where does Sophie play a role in that? Again, you're just a vessel for experiencing the moment. What Sophie is now might not be tomorrow. And I wrote something down when you were talking that I think fits into this as well. And it's like, is the closest we can get to knowing ourselves, knowing the present moment. Because imagine if you went up to a 3-year-old, say her name was Jenny, and you're like, who is Jenny? The kid would not know what you meant because they don't know who they are. And kids don't worry about knowing who they are when they're that young. It doesn't make sense. And what are kids? Kids are present. So it's almost like knowing thyself is at odds with knowing the present moment. Because like you said, if I'm trying to bring Sophie into this moment to show you who I am, that's going to get in the way of you experiencing this moment.
A really good example for me that I've been seeing so much in my life is my relationship to my yoga practice. And flash back like 6 months ago, or even like, I don't know when we started to have this realization that like, oh, I don't, it was collective. We both realized it. But from my own perspective, it was like, I stopped working out. I don't really work out anymore. And every time I try to work out, I don't know how to do it. It's so hard. And like this morning I was doing yoga on my mat and I had watched a video and then I was just kind of like, you know what? I just want to do my own flow. I want to do my own practice. And I think I was on my mat for probably like an hour, so immersed in this practice. And it was almost as if I had been doing yoga for like 10 years. Like I was flowing and in a downward dog and like stretching my calves and going up and down and stretching. And it was so easeful. No effort required at all. And yoga is such a good example for me because it shows this stark difference of when I try to think about doing yoga versus doing yoga and how there's no thought involved. It's like the body takes over. My body knows what to do. It knows where to put my foot. It knows how to perfectly align my arm to lift up to make sure it's aligning with my left hip. And to discover that ease is what translates, or really it's this ease that I have been experiencing in life where I'm not thinking and I'm just experiencing. And all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, I feel a lot smarter than I ever thought I was. I feel a lot capable than I ever thought I was. I feel like I can run a marathon. I feel like I can start a business. Because when you remove all of these thoughts that you're holding onto and literally your brain is firing synapses from the past, your present reality is literally just that. It's those thoughts getting projected onto your experience.
The word I have for this is conditioned responses. And this makes me think of you. If I would have asked you a year ago, Sophie, you want to go to yoga? Your conditioned response would be, I've been hurt in yoga. I don't like yoga. I can't do yoga. I'm bad at yoga. And I see how that conditioned response helps you quote unquote know yourself. You're like, I'm Sophie. I'm not good at yoga. I don't like yoga. And that's misleading because that's just a past experience that's governing who you think you are and what you think you can handle. So if you take that as one example, another example, think of you as a person, you're thrust into a new group of people where you know no one, you have nothing in common. Think of the automatic responses you might have and be aware of it, like the conditioned responses of how you would on autopilot reply to someone or how you would describe yourself, and how this is all very intellectual, all very from the mind. Like, I think group dynamics can sometimes make us uncomfortable. So instead of being vulnerable, we like to operate out of conditioned experiences, out of conditioned responses. And that's not really connecting with people, is when you're just sharing your conditioned responses of, this is the job I do, this is who I am, this is my experience with that, and the other person is doing the same thing. Well, what if you weren't able to communicate in conditioned responses? What if you were able to only express and experience things that were happening in the moment? And that's kind of like what T Group was, the event we went to last night, where there was like this like set of conditioned guidelines for the conversation, where you're saying like something like, I'm noticing this about myself, or I feel as though there's a story that I have about you and that you don't like me, or these kinds of topics that help you stay in the present moment, really. And when you're in the present moment, collectively, there's one thing that's happening across the board. You're not thinking about yourself. So again, it's impossible to know yourself. There is no you. There is just getting immersed in the experience that's happening. And if you are thinking about you, that's getting in the way of you experiencing what's happening. And I'm realizing this as we talk about it, of how contradictory, because I've heard these philosophers, I've heard Alan Watts talk about like, you can't know thyself. But as we've been talking about it, I recognize that you really can't know yourself because there's nothing to know about you. Because again, you are just a vessel to experience what is happening. And if you're grasping onto who you are, you're not actually in the moment. And that's why I think at times it can be so hard to connect, is because our conditioned responses have also made us safe. It means we have a sense of certainty or control. Oh, I'm fine because I make $100,000. I'm good. I don't need to live life because like I've settled on that. I'm good enough. Like I don't need to question anything else. Like I'm just good with that. And I name that exact mentality because I feel like that is the definition of getting comfortable, because I feel like I've been there. Oh, I have these external things. Check, 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 check. On paper, everything is good. But that's knowing, quote unquote, thyself a little too hard, a little too much, because you get to a point in your life and you realize, oh, you are just pretending to know yourself really extremely well because you're coping with the uncertainty and the unknown by over indulging in having certainty in these things that you are, when in reality, that's getting in the way of you experiencing things in a different way that's more freeing.
Yeah, I think a little bit ago you mentioned like being a child and being 3 and somebody saying a kid's name and just not resonating at all with it. Because when we think about our experiences as kids, like we don't have these stories that we've built about ourselves, this book about this is who I am, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. We just have the experience of what's happening in front of us. And I'm thinking about how like just in my experience in life, and it feels like in so many people's experiences around me, there's an age where the stories start and they grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm insecure, I'm awkward, I'm weird, I'm too short, I'm too overweight, I don't like my hair color. Next level, my job sucks, I'll never get a good career, I'll never have a good partner, and you build and build and build and build and build. And all of a sudden, your experience in life as a human being is so colored. And I don't even want to say colored because there's not much color there. When you're living in the world of your story and of thought, because you're not actually in the world. You're in a virtual reality up here. And I just see how like these stories, it's so incredibly painful to go through the process of flipping through thousands of pages that you've created about yourself, re-experiencing the day you wrote that down, and then understanding, oh wait, that's not true. Turn the page. Wait, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. You keep going, you keep going, you going. And for me, the analogy of that is crying, healing, going through pain, facing things, facing experiences from the past, facing all these things in my subconscious mind. And now, post-retreat, after like the retreat, after the mushrooms and everything was very intense, so much thought, kind of landing back to the ground with a blank slate and being like, oh, wait, right. I'm in control of my reality. And when I'm no longer operating from past patterns, preconceived beliefs, assumptions I have about the world and myself, I'm left with everything that's in front of me. And that's where crazy shit starts to happen. You start running into people. You start all of a sudden making money somehow. Your life starts to feel so effortless. And I have seen this happen in my life multiple times. When I let go, it's magic. It's magic. Like I'll just start running into people I was thinking about out of nowhere. But when I'm living in thought, it's like I'm isolated. And I'm living in a pile of darkness and restraint, and nothing's working out. And it feels like not only is nothing working out, but doing one single task is so incredibly tiresome. It's like pushing a weight. I have this backpack on with 1,000,000 bricks. Trying to move slowly. I can't move. And it's like those bricks are just all the stories. So why do you feel so free? Why can I flow effortlessly now in yoga when 7 months ago, or I was saying I can't even practice again. I hurt my hip once. It's because you can always come back to now. And this is how we change our life. And this is how we quite literally, from an energetic field, change our reality. When we once were a terribly anxious, depressed person, we no longer recognize ourselves as a relaxed, light, easeful being. It's a crazy process that I feel like I've been here before, but it's like there's always a cycle, it feels like. How does that all make you feel?
You said a lot there. I think it's really exciting. I resonated with a lot that you said. Everything that you said, it is an experience that I've had. And I'm really thinking about how you said, for some reason, all of a sudden, it feels like everything starts to fall into place when you stop thinking about yourself and dwelling on your stories. And I've personally experienced this because after 2 of the retreats we've gone on, this has happened. And it's probably because I went through stories. I was very in my head with the stories and sorting through them. And then I worked through them and I let them go. And who knows how long that lasts, how long you can let go of your stories for. And for us, this happening at similar times, sometimes it feels crazy, like a rush of new people come into our life, or a rush of opportunities come into our life, or a rush of alignment with other people happens. And that, for me, the way I see it is that it's, oh, right, we both are operating in the actual reality because we're not dwelling in our own heads about our own stories, about that we've made up and about that we've been attached to and we've been stuck in. Momentarily, we let go of that, maybe for a stint of a week or 2 weeks at a time. And that is really powerful because all of a sudden you're here, you're experiencing life in this moment, and you're not grasping for something that's not there. You're not holding on to how you see yourself. You're actually just experiencing what is happening in the moment, which makes sense that we like being in these states. They're natural to us. You quite literally have to teach a kid their name. You have to teach a kid their identity of who they are and what they are and where they come from when you're at that really young age, 2, 3, 4 years old. So coming back to this dedication to learning to know who I am in this lifetime. If I'm going down that path and trying to figure out who I am and really deeply believing into that, is that just deeply believing our conditioned responses, our experiences to inform who we are? And is that inherently limiting our perspective on the world, our experiences, our ability to experience reality? Does that actually make our world really small? Does really knowing yourself and living in a world where you know yourself, does that just make your world much smaller? Because on the contrary, if you're not trying to know yourself, if you're just trying to know the experience that you're in, there's going to be no daisy getting in the way of you experiencing this, bringing up your past conditioned experiences and trying to bring them into this moment. If you let go of that, are you really just experiencing what's here for what's here? And is that what allows you to have a broadened sense of reality and presence and peace, enjoyment, joy, fun, all of these things that we seek? Do we all land there by letting go of trying to know ourselves? Because if we let go of trying to know ourselves, nothing that we do defines us in a way that dictates how we're able to respond in each moment.
And when nothing dictates who we are, if we have a conversation with someone and we think we said something that was perceived wrong, we can just go, okay, moving on. Nothing has to build. Nothing ever has to build because our life literally is fleeting in every moment. So you're just left with peace, the experience of being here. And that's why it's like the only moment that exists is now. For eternity, it's just been it's just been the present moment.
And that is the exact thing that allows you to be light. All of those things that you hate about yourself that dictate your ability to be here, you can let them go. And that was something that was rising for me when we were trying to start this podcast, because we started it several times to do warm-ups and that stuff. And I noticed a judgment of, you don't want to create something that's bad. You don't want to create something that's bad, because I care about it being good. I care about creating something that is good because I enjoy that, which of course is subjective, but something that I feel connected to. But ultimately, if I'm able to let go of Daisy, it's like, well, that actually doesn't have to hold me down. And maybe holding on to that idea of Daisy is what's going to keep me wanting to make something quote unquote good. And that's going to be the exact thing that stops me from making something that's good, because I myself am getting in the way of me just experiencing the moment. That's because there's something that I'm grasping for and I'm bringing it into the moment, and that's stopping me from actually just having the experience to be had. And maybe that will give me the end product that, well, I'll end up enjoying. But the point is that the lightness of letting go of the expectation I put on myself, because I'm letting go of it meaning something about Daisy, because I'm letting go of Daisy, well, that means that doesn't weigh me down anymore if I'm able to let it go, because I'm not thinking about myself. I'm just in the experience for the benefit of being in the experience, the enjoyment of being in the experience, getting lost in the experience. Nothing's getting in the way of that.
Except our preferences for how we think the experience should be, and our desire to control it and want it to be different and think it shouldn't be this way, and judging ourselves and putting so much pressure on ourselves. And it's just so crazy when you zoom out in life and it's like, the world will go on without you. You could spend your whole life carrying a bag of bricks and then you just die. And it's like you're doing it to yourself. That's the craziest part. Because we think it's from this person and this event and this situation. It's the podcast. It's my job. It's my relationship. It's raining. It's my food burn. It's just like all the while we're adding weight and we're trudging along in the mud like a snail. But we can be sprinting like a cheetah, having the time of our lives. But that requires letting go of all the shit that you think. And if you want to know what that's like, go listen to our episodes from the past few weeks. It's fucking hard and it's painful. But you always have the choice of how heavy you make it and how painful you make it by how long do I need to hold on to this. And that's a really great takeaway for me today. Is just, I don't have to know myself. And maybe the effort of trying to know myself is where so much suffering begins. Kind of helping me remember the realization of the second retreat we went on, where I was like, I don't exist. If I'm not my prior experiences, if Sophie's not anything from the past, then what's the difference between our two beings right now, or our two everyone, every human, and the trees and everything happening on this planet? It just perceives space, but it does make sense that it's just one mind. It's all one consciousness.
Well, you said something earlier, Sophie, that time will go on without us. Everything will go on without us. You can also apply that to your own life in the duration of your life. Life will go on for you. Life will continue to go on. Whether you decide to hold on to all of your conditioned experiences and try to bring them with you as a reason to achieve, or a reason to help someone, or a reason to do something. This is the weight. And you can also go on and do all of the same things without those conditioned responses. Meaning that you can do things for the intention of wanting to improve the world, or improve your family, or improve your friendships, improve anything. You can still go about your life the same exact way. You just don't have to bring the heaviness of your conditioned responses into making all of that stressful. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have to look at your conditioned responses directly in the eye and experience them and accept them when they're happening, when they're getting triggered up. But it means that you can cut the cord, you can snip the cord after the duration of that, after you recognize why you're making these things stressful. You're able to instead do all of the things that you want to do without being stressed. Because there's only reason to be stressed if you are, in fact, putting the pressure on yourself because of these conditioned responses. Because I think when I first started understanding this conversation of letting go of yourself, I was like, I don't want to let go of myself. I like my life. I like doing things that I like, and I like the people I have in my life, and I love the people that I have in my life. And it took me a while to realize that none of that has to change. I just don't have to make myself suffer by beating myself up and putting pressure on myself, all because of these conditioned experiences and responses. I can acknowledge them, I can observe them, but I don't have to let them control the way in which my life moves. Instead, I'm able to continue moving the same way, but be more immersed, be more in the experience that's happening, and actually make a bigger impact than if I was so concerned with myself and my experience and what was driving me to do these things. And I wanted to share that because for me, realizing that made it all the more motivating, because there's excitement in living your life more deeply and more fulfilling, and realizing that a way that can help achieve that is by letting go of yourself, because you yourself are the one that carries all the weight, and you choose how much weight you want to put on yourself. And we probably don't even realize how often we beat ourselves up because of these past conditioned responses.
For the listener, if you're wondering how the hell do I let go of myself, I think it's important to remember it's not something you actively do or think through, but I think a really good example is allow yourself to sit through more experiences that you feel uncomfortable in and watch them happen. Like being at a dinner with a group of people you feel really nervous in, immersing yourself in it, or going on a walk and not listening to any music, or listening to music and just being in the experience. Like the more we're actually in the present moment, we get glimpses into what it feels like to not have that weight and of the bricks on us.
An example would be like you're at that dinner you gave an example of. In the past, when you were holding on to yourself, if you felt anxious because someone looked at you, you would run to the bathroom and stay there for 15 minutes to avoid having to socialize. Whereas if you're letting go of yourself, you would recognize, I feel really uncomfortable and awkward because this person looked at me. So I'm just going to acknowledge that and I'm going to strike up a conversation. Like that is what it means to let go of yourself. It's that you're not letting it control the way you choose to lose, the way in which you choose to live your life. You're further immersing into the experience in the present moment. And like that's what's going to allow you to actually enjoy it. So I really enjoyed the conversation that we had. I didn't know it was going to take this turn. But what an interesting topic. Letting go of the idea of yourself. It's a hard one to understand, but it also is a pretty practical one to understand. It really is just observing yourself and not responding to it, but instead allowing yourself to respond in the way that you want to respond, not what your conditioned experiences want you to respond with.
One more example before we close out this conversation. I think a fly just hit the window. I've noticed myself in interactions where I'm in public spaces and maybe I see a neighbor. And in the past, I'm like, that's awkward. Avoid. Go the other route. Walk the other way. And what I force myself to do is, no, you can say hi to them. Why are you feeling so uncomfortable? Or being at the park, there's a whole group of people with their dogs. And I'm the only one not with a dog. Normally, I'd be like, or in the past, go the other route. But recently it's been like, why would I change the path I'm walking? Just go towards them. And it's like these experiences where you could spend your whole life avoiding perceived discomfort, like the dinner example. Oh, I'm going to be alone with this person. I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous to be alone with this person. Instead of realizing, and I used to feel that way all the time, like I don't know what to talk about with people at dinner. It's like, that's a good topic. Like this awkwardness in dynamics with other people. And it's like, because you're thinking so much. Like there's so much that will unfold when you're just going into the experience and going into the situation. So this is a great conversation. I definitely feel pumped up from it and excited. It was fun to talk about it. And I felt like it was mind expansive and it resonated deeply. So thank you for chatting with me. And thank you to the listener for listening. We appreciate you being here as always. And if you ever have any questions, thoughts, comments, want to get involved in the conversation, DM us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We receive DMs from listeners sometimes, and it's nice to hear from you guys. So, Life Unpotted on Instagram.
And on that note, if you like the podcast, last time we did this, we got 2 more 5-star reviews. We're trying to get up to 100 5-star reviews on Spotify, and we currently have 85. So if you like the episode, if you like the conversation, if you like the podcast, do us a favor and go to Spotify right now and give us a review. I hope it's 5 stars. If it's not, that's all right too. Just give us a review that you like the episode on, and we will appreciate that. Know that that's helping us grow and reach more people, and appreciate that. So thank you for being here today, and we will see you next week.
I just decided I want to learn how to do a cartwheel. So I'm going to learn. Thanks for being here. We'll talk to you soon.